Hello, my darlings. I'm beyond delighted. I'm actually excited. I'm fangirling because today I get the absolute honor and pleasure to chat with Kimberly Schuitman, who is just the most incredibly inspiring self-proclaimed Virginius and founder, creator, and inventor of the My Cup, which is an incredible product. I'm sure that many of you are already using moon cups. There, she's got two there. Hello, lady. So she's going to share about her story of designing and creating these incredible reusable products. And we're also going to touch on her story and something that is, I think, very, very dear to her heart, and it's so important, which is working within the period poverty programs that she has running throughout New Zealand and beyond. Thank you, Kimberly, for joining me today. It's an absolute honour. I'm just delighted to have you here. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Darling, I'd love to hear a little about your story. And with all of these conversations, I invite the women that feel to talk about their first time bleeding. I feel like this is such an incredible connection to how we are relating to our menstrual cycles. Would you mind to share this for us?
Yeah, of course. I got my first period when I was around 14, and the first time I heard about periods was I was at intermediate level at school, and we were all had to go to this mothers and daughters evening at school, after school, I think it was, and our mothers came along, and we had these public health nurses. I would have been maybe 11, come along, and they talked to us about periods, and it was very matter of fact, and this is what's going to happen, and you're going to bleed. There was no explanation about what a period was, where it came from, what it meant. They just showed us the products, and it was very confronting and overwhelming, and it actually terrified me. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have blood coming out of me. I didn't know what a vagina was. I didn't know what anything. I didn't know what a vulva was, a clitoris, anything. I had no clue. All I knew that wherever I did my pee-pee was going to be blood coming out, and I had to use these big surfboard, because I'm 52. So in my day, there was, I think you could buy tampons, Tampax, I think, and pads. My mother went to the wholesalers and bought a massive box of big fat surfboard pads and put them up in my cupboard. And she said, well, there you go, that's for your period when it comes. And that was my introduction to periods. And I was terrified. I had no one to talk to. And when my period did come, I didn't want to talk about it, because none of my friends, nobody had ever mentioned what a period was. Or I did have one friend that overflowed all the time in class, and she often had to have days off, but I didn't even understand it. She didn't understand it. It was just, so that was I became very, I suppose, when you talk about dysmorphia, I would imagine that I was very much, that was me as well. I had never spoke about my period to anyone my whole life, up until even my husband, even like my partner of 20 years, when I first met him, or in the first sort of 5 years of our relationship, I never talked to him about my period. I hid it. I didn't want to talk about it. I was embarrassed and ashamed by my period, because I had that shame my whole life. It was something you didn't talk about. And I didn't even know I didn't know anything about it. And then I kept seeing this when Facebook sort of came out, and there was a few I saw something come up from a little company called Ruby Cup in the UK. So Ruby Cup is a social enterprise that for every cup that you buy, they send a cup to Africa, and they help girls in Africa who live in period poverty. And I didn't even know what period poverty was. I didn't know what menstrual cups were, but it kept popping up on my feed, and I started following them on Facebook, and I started reading these stories. And I started looking at their little cup. In fact, I don't have it with me right now. It's usually hanging around my desk somewhere because it's the instigator of my journey. So after about 8 months, I decided to buy one of these little cups. It was a little blue ruby cup, and it sat in my drawer for another few months. I'm sure of it because I received it and I didn't know what to do with it. And I kept following their page and trying to work out what a menstrual cup was, because in New Zealand, there was very few people, if any. I think there might have been 2 people selling moon cups, but nobody was selling this ruby cup. So one day I decided, we were going camping with the kids, and the campsite that we went to was quite remote. And I decided to take, and my period was due, and I decided to take my menstrual cup with me without any tampons. And my whole life, I've really struggled with tampons. I found them really painful. I used to get that dragging feeling. I used to dread my period. I hated it. It was never particularly heavy, but heaviness in periods is relative. So a person with a heavy period here and a person with a heavy period here, they both experience something quite different. So when I say my period was heavy, after all my experience and all my years of talking to women, my period is not heavy. And I was using a super tampon because I thought my period was heavy. And by about day 3, I'd start experiencing this intense pain. And I thought that was just part and parcel of using tampons. That's what you had to put up with. And that was just the tampon sucking on the walls of my vagina because it had nothing else to absorb. So I took this menstrual cup camping, and my period came, and I raced down to the toilet, and it was quite a big walk to go down to the toilets because we were in a little retro caravan down under the trees, and we had to walk, and so I raced down there, and I had sterilized it, and I beforehand and had it in its little pouch, and I had it in my pocket, and I sort of sat on the toilet and I popped this cup in, and I think my expectation was something was going to happen, like something weird was going to happen, or I was going to experience something. And I sat there with this little blue cup inside my body, and I went, I can't feel anything. This is weird. So anyway, I trotted off back down to the caravan, and I kind of walked around, and I thought, okay, because I've always used tampons and I can always feel them my whole life. Feel the string, feel the sucking, and I was like, I can't feel anything. So of course, 2 hours later, I was like, shit, I better go and check what's going on down there. So I went back to the toilets, pulled this cup out, and lo and behold, there was this tiny little bit of blood collected in the bottom. And I was like, holy cow, this is unbelievable. No pain.
Yeah.
It collected my flow and no leaking. And I just wanted to leap out of my skin and shout to everybody at the campsite that I had just discovered the single most incredible, it was like a million moonbeams had hit me all at the same time and changed my life, because my period had always been such a struggle.
And you get to see your blood. You get to see what your blood is like without being absorbed by, a plastic coated, inorganic piece of bleached cotton. You actually get to connect to your blood. Oh my God, I love this story.
Yeah. So then I did little, of course it's my first time. So I tried it for 2 hours, and then I tried it for another 2 hours, and then I left it for 4 hours. And then I sort of thought, well, what do I do overnight? And I left it overnight, and then I got up in the morning and raced off to the toilet because I was thinking, shoot, something's going to happen. And the thing that amazed me so much, I don't actually have a ruby cup here with me, but the thing that amazed me so much, that overnight I probably only had that much blood in it. And normally a tampon, because tampons, sorry, I'll just turn that down.
Yep.
No, I'm just going to turn it down. Tampons, do you know much about tampons?
Well, I know what I know.
Okay, well, let me tell you about a little clip about tampons. That's why I could sit here for hours and talk to you. Tampons, like a super tampon, I've done some research on tampons, and a super tampon absorbs about 14 mils of fluid. Okay, but what a tampon does is it has a very, very strong absorption mechanism where there's no off button. It just slurps and slurps and slurps and slurps. It's designed to absorb your menstrual fluid, but at the same time it's absorbing your very precious vaginal fluid, which is produced by the walls of your vagina, which keeps the health of your vagina in check. It keeps the pH balanced. It keeps the bacteria stopping from growing in your vagina because it's a damp, moist place. That fluid is incredible. That it's like your mouth. I always say your vagina is like your mouth with no teeth. Yep. Yeah. You've got saliva so we can talk, so we can eat, and your vagina produces saliva or menstrual vaginal fluid, which allows your vagina to stay healthy. And what the tampon does is it not only absorbs your menstrual fluid, it absorbs all that special fluid that your body is producing. And it can upset the balance of your vagina. You can get BV, you can get thrush, you can get all sorts of infections just by using tampons, because that fluid, it's all out of, the balance is out of check. So tampons, a super tampon, for example, will absorb 14 mils of fluid, but 5 mils of that will be your vaginal wall fluid. So when you look at your fluid in your menstrual cup, the most amazing thing at different times of your period is that you will clearly see, because the cup sits like that in your body, or like that, is that you'll see the blood separates, and you can actually see the fluid sitting on top. So you can actually almost measure how much of that fluid is coming into the cup. So your cup is amazing because it's not absorbing anything. So it's super comfortable, and it keeps your whole vagina healthy, you know, because it's not absorbing that fluid. Anyway, that's the tampon story.
It's brilliant. Thank you. That's such good wisdom to share. And I often wondered about that, because I've stopped using tampons and gone to a cup late, you know, in my menstrual life. But the comfort factor, and the fact now that you just mentioned it, like I no longer get thrush, and I used to feel quite dry inside, especially when you remove a tampon. I'd be like, you know, that feels like it's chafing the inside of my yoni wall. Like it feels like it's sandpaper in there. So now I understand that it's actually absorbing the vaginal fluid that's you know, meant to keep us moist. And yeah.
And it's just educating people that fluid is normal. Like in my life, I always thought that it was just revolting, because it was I didn't understand it. You know, like I didn't understand. That's why it's so important to educate everybody about their vagina. And when I do talks to groups of people from time to time, and that's something we really focus on, is the health of your vagina. And what tampons, I'm not against tampons, because there's, you know, I think that people that menstruate need to have a choice. So, and I never judge anybody. If you need to use a tampon, use a tampon. If you're comfortable with them, use them. But if you're going to use them, use something organic, because actually it's better for your body. But that dragging feeling, I know when I've talked to big groups of women, and we talk about this tampon being pulled out and that dry feeling at day sort of 3-4, you've got very little fluid left. That's why you really should use period underwear or a cup, even on those later days, because some people feel more safe with a tampon, which tampons are no less safe than a cup. A tampon will leak faster than a cup will. So it's just getting your mind around it really, and feeling confident.
And that's the other piece in that around tampons, before we move on, is that what I remember learning about them is that the processing of the cotton, the bleaching of the cotton, actually accelerates your bleeding. So therefore you bleed faster. Am I remembering this right? You bleed faster, so you use more tampons?
No, I don't know. I've never heard that. But what I do know is that when you use a menstrual cup, your period can be shorter, because it actually creates a little bit of a suction inside your vagina. Like it creates a suction and it draws down the fluid a lot faster. Okay. So some people experience a much shorter period, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I've noticed that too with myself. It's only now 3 to 4 days, and then I can, you know, I switch to the knickers or the undies. So brilliant. And the fact that we're not using single-use products, if you could speak to I think the impact on the earth around landfill for things like menstrual products is really unnecessary these days. And using products like menstrual cups, menstrual underwear is such a leap forward as far as, landfill goes. So
well, that's the next part, I suppose, is that once I discovered this menstrual cup, I actually bought some more and from the UK, and I shared them with my friends and said, you've got to try this. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're a complete nut job. Complete nut job. And because I was just, I was convinced that I don't know, I can't explain to you the feeling of not knowing about this product my whole life and then discovering it and going, why is this not available to every person that menstruates? Like, what is going on in this world? Like, what are they? So my brain started, I've got a very overactive imagination, and my brain started going, and I bought cups for people. And then my friends tried the cups and they went, oh my God, it's amazing. So I write, that's it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a website selling cups. So that's what I started, was just a very simple mycup.co.nz, and it was just a very simple website selling all the big brands in the world. Slowly, it took a very long time because of the money. It was very expensive to import stuff from overseas, and the volumes are quite high. So, and then I thought, shoot, why don't we make one in New Zealand? And at that point, I had no clue about the hurdles that I had to jump to do that in New Zealand. Like it was, if I'd known what I know now, I never would. It literally destroyed me, I think. My journey was one that was so, just what I had to actually do to make a product that had to go inside. It wasn't that simple. And medical grade silicone is a very, making a manufacturing tool for medical grade silicone is a very intricate process, and one that it took me 3 years to go from my idea to actually having a cup in my hand. Wow. It took me 3 years, because I had to, in order for me to get funding to start, because I applied for funding, and I through the Chamber of Commerce, and I really needed help to get my project off the ground, and the statistics that I was reporting on was incredible. So over that 3 years, I bought cups in from China. So what I did, and while I was selling cups, was I was researching cups that you could buy, just cost-effective cups that I could get out to a whole lot of people all at once to do surveys. So I bought in these cups, which were really fantastic, 3 different types. So I sent out 3 different sorts of cups to every single person, about 200 people. I was advertising it on Facebook. Please be a part of our survey. I'll send you 3 menstrual cups. You can give them a go. It's all free. You just have to report back to me once every 3 months, I think it was, on your experience. And basically my cup was born out of that research on those 200 women, and what Kiwi people wanted in a menstrual cup. So all of that research that was done was how this cup was created. And it did take 3 years, and the most amazing thing was I had no idea at this. I thought I was going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the first person. There's 2 other businesses that I've started in my life that I'm a first timer, like first in New Zealand, first, and this one was another one. I was going to be the first in New Zealand to produce a medical grade menstrual cup. And then one of my community partners who we donate cups to messaged me a few weeks before our launch and said, have you seen these guys? And I was like, no. And then there was another brand that was launching a menstrual cup made in New Zealand around the same time, but fortunately we were so lucky that we actually launched a week before they did, but their menstrual cups were made of a different material. So we're still the only menstrual cup that's made of medical grade silicone in New Zealand, and it has a life of 8 to 10 years. So it's got a really long life.
I just wanted to ask you about this because you mentioned them coming out of China, and I think that there is there's something to speak to about the difference between, you know, what we can find online from China at a very, uh, you know, very good price, what we think is a good price, in comparison to this this type of silicone that you're using. You know, like what are the benefits? What are the differences? I know myself, like putting something inside me. I've been using tampons for years and never really thought of it. But now that I'm using a cup, I'm more connected to what it is that I'm using, you know, inside my precious. Yeah. And yeah, I'd love to just know that.
There's two different materials that you can make a menstrual cup from, and one of them, like, well, there's three actually. The very first menstrual cup was part of my research was researching menstrual cups over the history. So menstrual cups were first created in 1930, so it's really interesting. I know, so someone really did have an amazing thought. They obviously went menstrual cup, tampons, how can we make the most money out of women, because these women menstruate every month. So
Wow.
Yeah, I know that's another whole conversation, but they were first created in 1930 and they were made of rubber. So that was the first material that was used, which is very natural.
Yep.
But rubber can be quite hard. So, and then the other products are medical grade silicone, which is, I suppose, medical grade silicone is the most biocompatible material with the human body. I'll tell you the difference between TPE, which is thermoplastic elastomer, and medical grade silicone. So medical grade silicone, of course, originates from sand. So I'm just trying to think what TPE is. It's a thermoplastic elastomer, so it's a mixture of different materials. But how I try to explain it to people is medical grade silicone will last a really like 8 to 10 years, and medical grade silicone will never lose its shape, ever. Okay. And the way that you can test that your medical grade silicone, so if you order a menstrual cup online and you don't know where it's made, when you squeeze your menstrual cup together really, 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 really tight, like that, like you just squeeze. If it blanches white, it means that it's not premium grade silicone. It means it's got fillers in it, and it could have heavy metals in it or something that could be dangerous for your health and leach out into your body. So that is how you tell the difference between a premium grade product of medical grade silicone and one that possibly, and there are cups that blanch, like we've got some downstairs just to show people what
it's like. Yeah.
It's okay. So a medical grade silicone cup, if an elephant, this is what I tell people, if your vagina is a flat tube. So your vagina just doesn't sit like that the whole time.
Yep.
Like it doesn't stay open, all the time, and you can see up there. So it's a flattened tube. And I refer to it as a potential space. Okay. Because your vagina can accommodate a penis, a large penis, a small penis. It can accommodate a menstrual cup, a tampon. It can have a baby pass through it, a baby's head pass through it, and shoulders. So it's a potential space. It's incredible. It's surrounded by muscles, and it's very strong, your vagina, unless you're my age and you're 52 and things start to, gravitate south. But that's right. That's just normal. So your vagina moves all the time. So a menstrual cup moves with your body. Okay, so if I put that inside me, it might actually be sitting in my body like that. Or if I go and stand up, it might be like that. Or if I go and lie down on my side, it might be like that. So it moves with your body. Okay, so the benefit of a medical grade silicone menstrual cup is known not only as the material, but the most biocompatible with the human body. If an elephant sat on that for 6 months flat like that, an elephant, when the elephant stands up, that cup will bounce back into its shape. So a medical grade silicone has a material memory. That's what it's called, a material memory. So it will never lose its shape. Amazing. Not for the whole time that you use it. The only thing that will denigrate or break down is if you use chemicals to sterilize it. and you leave it for too long in chemicals, the surface of the menstrual cup can become slimy and you might need to buy another one. So that's your choice whether you use chemicals, like if you soaked it in Dettol or I don't know, bleach or something and you forgot about it for 3 months, it's just not going to be right when you take it out. Okay. So and whereas a TPE cup, thermoplastic elastomer, it loses its shape after sometimes 2 to 3 years, mainly 3 to 4 years. So at about 3 to 4 years, your TPE cup will need to be replaced. So that's to me, the most sensible decision. It would have been cheaper for me to make cups out of TPE because it's much easier to make a tool to make thermoplastic elastomer. But I was looking at the longevity of the cups for people that were living in poverty. That was my main focus, is that I wanted to be a social enterprise that helped the people that couldn't afford a menstrual cup, because I knew that cups were going to be an expensive outlay for a lot of people. And I wanted to do like a buy one, give one, so that if every cup that was bought, I would donate one to a community organisation that could gift them to people that needed them. So medical grade silicone was the reason why I chose that material, because I could have taken the easier route and produced something cheaper. It would have been a lot cheaper for me to produce. But that's the kind of the difference. Also, TPE feels very plasticky. Medical grade silicone is nice and soft and smooth, and it feels more, to me, I prefer it, but there's a lot of people that use TPE cups. There is, and they're great brands. So, but you will have to, they do lose their shape after a period of time. And once that starts to happen, they may start leaking. So, because they're not moving with your body anymore. Yeah.
Period poverty. This is something that I learned about years ago, just very, very briefly, but it was again through following your Instagram account that I really saw what's going on in the world, and I'm blown away that this is actually a thing. I mean, young girls not going to school, young girls, not getting the education that they need to get them out of poverty due to the fact that they don't have the proper hygienic conditions and sanitary products to help them, move through this. So please speak to a little about how My Cups is working to reduce period poverty. Okay,
so My Cup, when I started it, I wanted to start a buy one, give one. That was my focus, and that was in 2014. So I had extensively researched Ruby Cup and what they were doing in Africa, and I felt that in New Zealand we needed to help the people in our own backyard before we could help anyone, because if everybody else is helped here, then they can help outside of, we can all help outside. So my first focus was to do a buy one, give one, and find community partners that would, my rules were that I would gift cups to any community partner that would gift the cup with education. Okay. So you couldn't just hand them out like Tic Tacs and go, here goes a cup, this is going to save your life, because ultimately people, the minute they heard the word free and the minute they want it, but then they don't know what to do with it. So the rules were you had to gift them with education. And I've had some incredible projects running in New Zealand with people that have, like, we've got a very, up in Northland, we have the Tuko Legacy, who have given out over 3,000 menstrual cups to their community, and their community is one of the most impoverished in New Zealand, Mōrewa and Kawakawa, and they've lifted their people who menstruate out of period poverty by doing that. Very small communities, very tight communities, really easy to, they were doing it via their cars. They would go, you got one of those cups, and they, and they'd educate through the window, and they were just beautiful. It was such a beautiful, what they were doing was amazing. So, and they still huge advocates for, so that's just one of the many projects that we run. We've got many people that still gift out our menstrual cups. They just email us when they need some more, and we just send them out to them. I don't tend to proactively look for people anymore, because I get approached all the time by communities wanting to use sustainable period products now, because in New Zealand, we are so aware of the sustainable menstrual cups have just ticked so many boxes, and the sustainability is just, menstrual cups are the single most sustainable period product in the world. Well, I've researched that and I feel that they are. They save about 39.5 kilos every 10 years of menstrual waste from the environment. And, you know, people, when you gift somebody a menstrual cup, even in a community that's, you know, where they're struggling, they start to think more, because it dawned on me when I was using a menstrual cup, I'm not throwing these tampons into the bin anymore. And after the earthquakes here in New Zealand, in Christchurch, we weren't allowed to flush anything down the toilet, and I didn't even know that people were still flushing tampons down the toilet here. So that was a whole, like, that's why I'm saying I could talk to you for hours about all the research I've done and on waste, you know, and that, like, in Christchurch alone, there's a ton of inorganic waste that's collected in the big sieves from our wastewater, which includes nappies, tampons, pads, cotton buds, condoms, and they collect every day. There's a ton of inorganic waste that's going through our toilet water. You know, I mean, people are still doing it. And so by gifting a menstrual cup to someone, they have an epiphany. It's like, oh, I'm actually not putting anything back into the land. I'm not polluting anymore. And then they start to think about something else they can do. And every year they're adding to there, like, I'm now using someone's given me just a cup that I can use for my coffee, and now I'm using, I'm making compost, and now I'm, you know, like, it's the start. A menstrual cup can start people's journey about sustainability, you know. So yeah, but getting back to the period poverty is a massive topic in New Zealand. I have backed off a little bit from it in the last 12 months. 2 years ago, I co-founded the Good Fund, which was, instead of doing our giving from my cup, we're giving from an entity, a not-for-profit called the Good Fund, which provides, we were doing all sorts of period products, but we had a bit of a break in our trust system last year, so I'm only supplying menstrual cups to people. So we're still giving out via the Good Fund about between 65 and 100 menstrual cups straight out into the communities directly so people just apply. If they feel that they haven't got enough money to buy a cup, they just apply for one through the Good Fund, and we no questions asked, send one out to the community. Period products are very expensive. What people, you know, the people that are ignorant towards period poverty don't realize that people that live in period poverty are not just people that have no money. They might be single income families where mum's deciding, she's got 3 kids at home, dad's working. She might be deciding between buying period products or buying a loaf of bread. Yeah. And they just don't have a spare dollar to spare. Even at the warehouse where tampons and pads are $1 a pack, they don't even have that. She's deciding between the dollar loaf of bread. And the impact of that is alienation from the community. They're out of the community for a week. They're sitting on a towel or putting a sock in their undies. They're using cut up nappies. So they'll actually buy a pack of cheap nappies and they'll cut the nappies up and use those. Period poverty is when like kids are too ashamed to talk about periods and they are scared to ask for tampons and pads. So they just, rather than ask for something, they just don't go to school. So I know I'm working very closely with somebody in Christchurch who looks after truancy in Christchurch, and it's really interesting talking to her about the percentage of menstruators, of the people that menstruate, who don't go to school when they get their period, and the truancy is so high in these low socioeconomic areas, and they're missing out on the education, which is crucial for them succeeding in life.
Yeah.
And this is in a modern country, like we've got period poverty in a very modern and then there's all the levels of health and hygiene as well, is that people, you know, the problem with obesity, this is another problem, is that kids are now, because of, we're gonna get the kickback from this for years, is that the amount of crap that's in our food, and especially the cheap food that goes into our bodies and makes and creates obesity. Like a bottle of Coke is cheaper than a bottle of milk, you know, and these children who actually don't have a choice, they just get obese, and they're getting their periods at 8 and 9 years old. The parents are keeping them out of school because the schools themselves have never been set up at primary school level to cope with 8 and 9-year-old kids that don't know how to change a pad in their undies. They don't even understand what's going on with their bodies. I mean, I didn't get my period till I was 14. I know kids as young as 8 that got their periods. So, and what happens with obesity as well is that obesity can cause early onset menstruation. So not only is this child unable to keep up with sports and they're just feeling gross, they're also getting their periods at 8, 9 years old, because the obesity can cause this early onset puberty. So there's all these levels of people living in these, you know, it's diet, there's so many levels to it, and period poverty is just kind of right at the bottom, where, you know, it's this and this, and then the root, and then you've got to get to the root causes.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna, you know, and the shit in our food, sorry to use that language, but you know,
it is what it is. Actually, it's worse than shit. It's poison. You know, it's the poison that's in our food.
Yeah, and we don't know. Like, I was born in 69. I was born in 69. Yay!
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm an oldie but a goodie. I was born in 69, and you know, back then we were given a relatively clean diet. I could well imagine, because we ate a lot out of my grandparents' garden.
At the garden, exactly.
Yeah. And so, and then the 80s came along, you know, the disposable era, everything's disposable and white, and we're all flipping freedom. And I mean, the 70s was the freedom, but the 80s brought along plastic and disposables and easy throwaway. And you know, the problem now is, and this is something that I really drive home to people when I do my talks, is that landfills are now being sealed. So I don't know about in Bali or in Australia, but in New Zealand, the landfills are now sealed. So what happens is, in order to biodegrade a tampon or a pad, so a tampon or a pad in a normal landfill that has access to water and air, biodegradation only happens with water and air.
Yep.
You know that, but I'm just sort of, you know, highlighting it. It'll take 500 to 800 years for a tampon or a pad to biodegrade in a normal open landfill with water and air.
But the land 100 years.
Or to 800. But that's in a normal open air landfill, okay? Right. So I've left a legacy of tampons and pads for my great grandchildren, hopefully, in the environment, and I can never take that back. I can never take those tampons and pads. Oh, I didn't ever use pads, but I can never take those tampons back and do something with them. So now that they're sealing the landfills, so what they do now is we meant to put our tampons into the waste, and often, you know, at the supermarket they sell the little bags that you put your tampon in, and then you put them in. Yeah, so they're inside a bag. They're not going to biodegrade anyway. So they go into the landfill, they seal the landfill so it has no access to water and air. So you can't tell me that those tampons and pads are there forever. They're never going to go away. They're going to end up washing down into our oceans, and it just, it's a never ending. I can't, you know, and even the tampon applicators that are paper, where are they going? Like, are people consciously putting them in their recycling, or are they just putting them in the bag with the tampon and the, you know, I mean, it goes on and on and on. I could talk for hours about all this sort of stuff. So I'm crazy about the sustainability behind it, and the amount of waste that we're preventing. Like I've done a lot of work with the councils, talking to them about this, and they would prefer, like I wanted to find out what the best way to dispose of a menstrual cup to create as little impact. And we were looking at grinding them up and using them for racing tracks and all that sort of thing, you know, because that's what they do. But the council said to me, no, because those little pieces can break off and go into the ground and then go back into our water system. And so the best way, so you compare that to 39.5 kilos of menstrual waste, that's 15 grams. They said to me they would rather that go into a landfill clean, because it's not polluting anything. It's not doing anything to anybody. It's not harming anybody. It's not putting any flipping, you know, and the blood is going back into our water stream, and it's actually, you know, it's just going back to nature, which is, you know, tipping out. So anyway, I hope that I digress, I know, but I've got so much to talk about.
I mean, there's so much, and you're right, we could talk about this for days and days and days, because what happens when you have, you know, women especially that are committed, enthusiastic, passionate, all of these things, we discover more questions, and we discover, like, things open up, and I can feel all these little, you know, blossoming buds of curiosity and light bulbs going off for me now. And it's like, wow, everyone this year for their birthday is getting a menstrual cup. It's
Exactly.
That's a no-brainer.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was the period poverty and at different levels, so if you want to hear about that. So in 2018, I was contacted by the Stop Demand Foundation. So this is going to be a very big story for us going forward, because we have now committed as a group of people, there's a group of us, have now committed to sending as many menstrual cups as we can to Nigeria. So the Stop Demand Foundation is founded by a lady called Denise Ritchie, and she originally was responsible for helping getting the abducted girls back from the Boko Haram. So these girls, I've spent a lot of time in Africa in my past. Like I spent 6 months there when I was in my late 20s, and the poverty there, it's a totally different level of poverty. I can't even explain to you the poverty. These people live on the same food or no food for the rest of they eat mealy meal or whatever it is for their whole life. They make pads out of sand. They sit on sand. They sit over a hole. They are, it is horrific. It is totally, you know, the level of poverty. Anyway, so Denise contacted me and wanted to talk to me about menstrual cups, because she would take sanitary pads to Nigeria, and she was starting to feel guilty about it. Like she would take I think she's taken 15,000 sanitary pads, disposable ones, to Nigeria. And then she saw a story about a menstrual cup, and she contacted me and said, well, why can't we take these to Nigeria? And I said, well, there's no way you can't, you can't. And then she started to feel guilty about the waste. Like, where was their waste going after, you know, single-use products for these women was ridiculous, you know, because they it was just ridiculous at the time. So she did some fundraising. This is the beginning of the story anyway, and there's going to be a massive amount of work done around this in the next few years. She did some fundraising and raised $20,000, and she took 2,000 cups to Nigeria in her hand luggage, because it's so dangerous to get in there, and she had to go in undercover and you know, on another, you know, under a medical thing, and she starts working with an NGO called the Peach Aid Medical Initiative. Nkazi Obeem, who's won amazing awards. She's an incredible woman who provides help for pregnant women in the IDP camp, so the internally displaced camp. Yeah, for these women who have come out of the, they've come out of the Boko Haram, you know, some of these girls. So these people have displaced, they've got no home, they're on their own, they don't have husbands, so, or they're pregnant, or and they don't understand about birth control. So what they do, the Peach Aid Medical Initiative, is they go into the camps and they educate the women, they scan them, they scan their bellies, they educate them on menstrual cups. They give them all a menstrual cup, and they also educate them on contraception, and they hand out condoms, and they give them these birth packs, these natal packs with vitamins in them, and they give them injections and, you know, healthy stuff to make sure that they are, you know, healthy. So this Nakazi Obeam, who runs the Peach Aid Medical Initiative, she's amazing. So we're really excited about this next phase of our giving. We're still continuing to give in New Zealand, but the level of poverty, there's a lot of initiatives now, like for instance, the government in New Zealand is doing free menstrual products into schools. So we feel that we can kind of back off a little bit, and we can actually redistribute what we're doing into other projects as well. So we're not only we're helping in New Zealand, but we're now, and we're doing a new fundraising project in a few months to get another 2,000 cups. We've just sent 500, like my cups just gifted 500 cups and sent them to Nigeria. And we're now getting the life-changing stories back again. And these stories are, I mean, it's a whole different level, you know, of giving. It's you really feel like you're making a difference.
I think it's like
you can see the impact.
The most beautiful things that a woman can gift another woman is the connection to her source. And you mentioned it, and we spoke about it earlier, is like when you can see your blood and you can see it, you can connect to what's going on for you each month, you know. And I feel like there's a piece around the period poverty and the shame. It's like you're continually in this like hellback loop that you're in poverty, you're eating shit, you feel shit, and you're blaming it on the fact that you're a woman, because, you know, you're seeing that the brothers in the community aren't having these situations. They're still going to school, they're still, you know, off doing that life thing that seems to stop when you're in a scenario where you don't have an option. You know?
But, you know, what's interesting, you know, is the cultural, like I do a lot of reading on cultural practice, cultural beliefs, and there's so many different, like in New Zealand, Indigenous people, that's colonization. So Pākehā coming into New Zealand, I mean, it has had a huge impact on, because Pākehā, the colonial ways is to not talk about it. You don't talk about those things. You don't, you know, you're just very stoic, and, you know, you don't talk about that sort of thing. But, you know, our cultural customs, our Indigenous people, they honoured menstruation.
Yeah.
They honoured it. You didn't have to cook during that time. You could rest because you were the life giver. You were the life giver, and you were such an important part of the village or the community, because you were the giver of life. And that menstrual blood was the Red River. It was sacred.
Yeah.
And so if you follow our story, in the next few weeks, a movie was made. So you will see that. But there was a movie made in Nigeria called Sacred Blood after our menstrual cups had gone in there. A film company, a girl was very passionate about talking about menstruation and the beliefs in Nigeria, and that is coming. So we'll have that on our story at some point. So that story is incredible, and it's actually, we need to go back to that. We need to go back to empowering ourselves and knowing that blood is sacred, and actually we need to understand our bodies more, and that the blood that comes out, like people don't even know that our uterus has like these little capillaries in it where the taps go on and off, you know, like there's all these, that's why I'm saying I could talk to you for hours, you know, there's, you know, to help the lining of the uterus come out, there's this incredible process where your uterus has these little taps that go on and off to help that be released down through the cervix and into the vagina. You know, we need to embrace all of that and understand how our ovaries work and what the hormones mean and how we can, men don't have the same power. The hormone that's released to after we've had our period, the estrogen, is power giving. We can climb a mountain, we can run a marathon. If you can plan those things around your estrogen producing phase, there's a week there where you can write an essay, or you can that's your most creative phase of your, you know. And then when the progesterone kicks in, be easy on yourself. No, book a massage, like just do it all, like embrace that, because we men don't have that. They don't have the ability to that power that we have to actually embrace our hormones instead of calling them nasty and, oh my God, there's those hormones again. Talk to your daughters. I've got a 14 and 16-year-old, and we talk about, you know, and embracing those hormones. When you finished your period, plan something that you've always wanted to do, because you will do it.
Yeah, it's embracing our cyclic nature as women. And this is what they would do. This is what they would do when we were, you know, living on the land and living more in community, you know, and they'd plan around the women, you know.
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, there's so much to learn, and I learn. I think I'm a bit of a I believe that you never stop learning. And I believe, because I mean, I'm 52, and some people give up, you know, and they say, oh, well, I'm too old for that now. But I still feel like, in my mind, I still feel like I'm in my 20s, and I've never give up learning. Like I'm learning new crafts at the moment. I'm very into my creative side, and I've picked up a lot of stuff lately that I'm you know, I'm really looking into my connection with nature, and embracing that, because I've left it behind for so long because I've been working on this project. But, you know, just connecting with all the things that you love and make you who you are, and then connecting with that power within as well. I mean, I've been through menopause, I have to admit. So I'm in a different phase, but I've had a whole lifetime experience of periods and life-changing moments and epiphanies. And now I've also been through menopause. I understand when we get people ringing us about menopausal flow, heavy periods, no periods, uteruses that won't stop bleeding, you know, all that sort of thing. So I do have, I've just got the whole, you know, I've done it all, I suppose.
Yeah. Thank you. You truly are. You're a queen. You're a genius, and and a queen. Like, and you know, I just am so inspired, and thank you. I can't thank you enough for this sharing. Like, it's,
well, you know, we need to talk more about these things, and I've loved talking to you today. So we must do this again, and maybe we can create some new topics and just go a wee bit deeper into each everything, you know.
There's a beautiful thing that's already formulating in my mind. I was like, oh yes, okay, because I'm turning 49, and I'm in this new phase, or moving into the new phase, and I'm super excited about it. And I actually, there's some days where I cannot wait, and a hot flush comes to remind me that I'm not quite there yet, and I'm bleeding as well. So it's like I'm in this like transition, and some days it's like, whoa. Okay.
I know, and the hot flushes, you know, I still get them every now and then. I don't get them as much anymore, but I had them for about 6 years. It was pretty, you know, some people just a year or whatever, but I had them for 6 years, and they were debilitating. But I actually decided that I was going to do it natural.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased that I did, because I experienced the full force of nature by doing it without any help. And I just, you know, took a few herbs and made some teas and did that sort of thing. And I was mindful about it. If I had a hot flush, I would go and blast myself under the air conditioner, you know, like, and just take time to cool off, you know.
Well, I often find myself sitting in the bath because it's cooler than.
Well, you're in Bali. You're so hot anyway.
Yeah, the swimming pool's warmer than a bath, so I fill up the bath with cold water, and I sit in that, and I'm like, okay, I'm good now, and I, you know, get back out. But doing it natural for me, like you too, I wanted to feel it. I didn't want to numb it down. I wanted to fully feel the intensity of what it means to be woman, you know?
Yeah.
It's going to be another conversation.
Yeah, that's another conversation, because that comes with lots of pluses and against as well, because there are some people, there's some, I got the pleasure of working with an amazing Australian Lara Bryden. You've probably heard of her, just doing some talks with her and having conversations with her, and she's written the period manual, or what is it? I can't remember what it's called. And yeah, there's a whole lot of pluses and minuses too, you know, with people that go through menopause. They there are some people that do need to take hormones, but there's, you know, it's just it's your choice. Always what I say is, it's your body, your choice.
Your choice.
And there's no judgment. Nobody's got any judgment for anybody. It's your body, your choice, and what works for you. And if you're happy and content and empowered, then you do whatever it is that you need to do, you know.
Thank you. I feel complete in this conversation, and thank you. I'm going to stop our recording. Oh, wow. There we go.